Guys, in this video, I'm going to show you the basic steps of mounting a rifle scope on your rifle. And of course, I'm going to be mounting my Arken Optics EP5. You guys have recently seen this in an unboxing video. And again, I want to thank Arken Optics for sending this out. I really appreciate it. They wanted to know if I would be interested in testing some of their stuff. And I jumped at the opportunity because I am familiar with the type of scopes that they make. Great quality scopes. Now what we're going to be doing is I've basically just got my camera set up. I'm going to be showing you the process that I use for mounting a scope on a rifle. I'm going to be mounting this scope on my Remington 700. This is a gun that I have had for several years. I absolutely love shooting it. It is probably one of the most accurate rifles that I own. And it's just the basic process of mounting the scope and all of the needed components. We're not going to be violating any type of YouTube's rules or anything like that. We're going to be following them as laid out in their guidelines. Now, all of the tools, everything that you see in the video, I'm going to be putting down in the description. And basically, I do a voiceover in this video because I do not want to mess this up. So I basically just set the camera up, let the camera roll while I was working, and then came back in and have done a voiceover. So, but I really appreciate it. Arken Optics, thank you again. And guys, I would appreciate you if you would go down and check them out, visit the links down in the description, and thank them on my behalf. I really appreciate it, guys. But for now, let's get into mounting this Arken Optics scope. The first thing that you're going to want to do is to make sure that you clean the rifle where the mount is going to be. Here I am taking some alcohol and just cleaning all of the oil and everything off of the rifle. You'll also want to clean where the screws are going to be threaded in as well, because your Loctite is not going to adhere to that if you don't have it cleaned well. Once you get everything cleaned, I'm going to take a little bit of Loctite, put it on the mount, place the mount into position, and then I'm going to take the screws themselves, put a little bit of Loctite on them, and just start them just one at a time. Start those screws into place. Do not run them all the way down. We're going to be torquing them coming up, but for now I'm just putting them in the holes where they're going to go and just getting them started. And of course, one thing you want to make sure of is that you use your shorter screws on the front if it's a Remington 700, because you do not want to lock in that action to where it will not function. You know, once I get these screws in position, I come back and, you know, make sure they're torqued properly. You're going to see here in just a few moments, but for now I'm just getting them each in place. You know, it takes just a few minutes to do this, and you want to make sure that you do it right, having it cleaned properly, having just a little bit of that Loctite properly put on those screws, as well as that base is going to keep that scope mount from moving. And that's the last thing you want that to do, is to move around. Now here I've got my fat wrench. I'll leave a link down below the video to where you guys can go and pick up some of the things which you see in this video. You definitely need a torque wrench, and for these I've got it set to 15 inch-pounds of torque. I'm just running the screws home. I'm not torquing it as of yet. I'm just getting all of the screws run down into position. And once I get all of them down to where they're just beginning to get snug, that is when I will start torquing them. You know, just go from one end and then work my way into the middle, and then run back and forth on each of those a few times to make sure that they are torqued properly. Don't try to just judge it by feel or anything like that. If you over tighten them, you're going to strip out your receiver. You know, you can damage your firearm and just make yourself a mess. So here I'm just going through, finishing up, torquing all of the screws to make sure that they are right. And once I get that done, we will be moving on to the next step in the process. You want to make sure that that action works to where it's not binding up, and you want to make sure that it works smoothly, because there again, if you have the wrong screws, then it's not going to work. There's two kinds of people that mount scopes: people that use levels and people who are wrong. Okay, if you do not put a level on your rifle, if you do not level that rifle and level that scope, you're not going to have it on the way that it needs to be. These levels are not very expensive. I'll put a link down below. This is just a line level. You can get levels that will clamp onto the Picatinny rail, and you can see that I'm actually leveling the rifle two different directions. I want to make sure that it is as level as possible, and then I'm locking it in on my bog pod. You know, I want to make sure that it is exactly where it needs to be. Once you get that rifle leveled, then you can move on to getting your scope rings mounted and things like that. But it has got to be level. Okay, do not try to eyeball it, do not try to guess. Get a level and do it right. That's the only way that your rifle is going to be accurate. Here you can see the Arken scope rings. These are the Halo scope rings. Thanks again, Arken Optics, I really appreciate it. And these are some beefy scope rings. They are very nice scope rings. And of course, I'm getting the screws. I got to take the screws loose just a little bit to be able to get them to go on the rail, as you can see here. And I actually did have to readjust the rear one slightly. Where I thought I was going to need it was not where I needed it, as you're going to see jump here in just a minute. If you'll see where it sits on that rail currently, and then where I finally get it locked in, it's actually moved up a bit. You can see there, I moved it up just a bit. And here we are putting the front one on, and make sure that these scope rings go over top of the islands, you know, the front and the rear. You don't want them directly on top of your ejection port. You want them on the islands, right, pretty much over where your screw mounts are. Once I get that done, I come back in with the fat wrench and torque these to 18 inch-pounds. Okay, the scope mount, the rail, was torqued at 15 inch-pounds, and then these I torqued to 18 inch-pounds, and that is the same that I used on the 4 bolts on each of the scope rings. Okay, and here I'm just going to remove the caps and just set them out of the way. And one thing that I do is I put the same cap back on the matching scope ring. I keep it in the same direction and everything. That's just something that I do. But something else that I do, that you're going to see in just a moment, once I get these caps removed, I'm going to bring that level back in, because I've been torquing on that a bit. I want to make sure that that gun is still level. I'm going to set that level on those scope rings. I'm going to make sure that they are where they need to be. I'm going to check that rail again, and just to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Again, guys, level that scope, level that gun. Okay, it's just one of those things that too many people just overlook. Here I'm getting the rifle, getting the scope set on the rifle. Don't push the scope down into the rings. Make sure that it seats all the way. If it does not, if it's trying to bind up, then you have a problem. Either your rings are not mounted right or something. Do not force it. You will damage your scope. Okay, but make sure that you get it to where it sets down in there properly. Here I'm putting one of the caps back on and then just running the screws down. Also use just a little bit of Loctite on those. You don't want your rifle scope to come loose. You can see here I'm putting the rear cap on, and again I'm just running those screws down. I'm not torquing them yet. I want to make sure that I get everything just run down to where they're touching, because I still want to be able to move that scope around just a bit. I need to set that eye relief. I need to make sure that it is level. Okay, you can see here I do have just a little bit of wiggle in that. I can slide it just a bit, and here I'm setting my eye relief. I know exactly where it needs to be on this rifle. You know, I've had this rifle for years. I absolutely love it. Now I'm taking my level and I'm putting it on top of where the cap was. You can see that I have the cap removed, and now I am getting the scope itself level. All right, you want to make sure that you get it level with the rifle. So I am leaving the level on the scope, and I am adjusting it ever so slightly. We know that our gun is level, and now when we get that bubble right where we need it, I'm going to leave that level on top as I begin to tighten those caps down. There again, I want to make sure that I've got everything level. And then I'm going to begin snugging up those caps, and you want to watch the gaps each side of those caps. You want to make sure that it is even on both sides, and as you begin to run those screws down, make sure that it does not move. You can knock it out of adjustment as those caps begin to pull down, and do not force it. If something is not setting straight, do not try to force it, because you can damage your scope, as I'd mentioned before. But here I'm just running the caps down, making sure that the screws are just all touching where they need to be, and then once I get that done, I will actually torque them. And again, that torque spec is 18 inch-pounds is what I torque these to. You can see here I'm just still running the caps down, running the screws down, and then in a few moments I will be coming back in and torquing them. When you torque them down, make sure that you're doing a crisscross pattern. I'll snug down one screw on one cap and then go to the opposite screw on the opposite cap. You can see here I'm just going back and forth just to make sure that I get all of them ran down equally. If you don't run them down equally, it's not going to be right. And again, I cannot stress it enough, guys, don't force it. Once I get it all tightened down and torqued down, I'm putting that level back on it, just a quadruple check to make sure that it is level. All right, this is a time that if I needed to, that I would make an adjustment if I needed to, but since I don't, what I can do now is simply move on to putting the cap back in place. These caps are held on by 3 small screws, and now I'm just setting it back in place, and we'll be zeroing the rifle in a future video, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for that. But for now, I'm just getting everything put back together. Arken Optics scopes, I'll have to say this is a very well-made scope. I am very happy to have it, and the mounts and everything that you see here, everything is solid. The rings, the scope is not moving. After I got everything else mounted up, I went ahead and added the sunshade. Now this did come with the scope, and it just makes it look even better. It also has a very good function. If you've ever shot in sunlight, you will know just how much of a benefit having one of these is. You're going to be seeing in future videos some more with this scope. I'm going to get it out to the range, I'm going to get it zeroed, and just enjoy shooting it. This is a very high quality scope. I'm real glad to have it. And for now, I would appreciate it, as I'd mentioned earlier, go down, visit the link down in the description of this video, go over to Arken Optics, check them out, thank them on my behalf. I would really appreciate that if you guys would do that for me. But guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell, and even though this was for an Arken Optics scope, these are the basic principles for mounting any type of rifle scope on your gun. Guys, thanks for watching. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and we'll see you next time.